Good morning. My name is Allison Jones, and I'm the Membership and Development Events Coordinator at the Missouri Botanical Garden. I am delighted to be coming to you today live from the Kitchen Conservatory in Clayton. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's very special member speaker series. Before I introduce you to our fabulous speaker, Cori, I want to let you know about the upcoming member speaker series programs we have planned. Next month, we will welcome Garden President Emeritus, Dr. Peter Raven, for a conversation about his long career as a scientist and conservationist. Dr. Raven is joining us to mark quite an accomplishment, the publication of his new book, Driven by Nature. MBG Press will be offering the book at a 20% discount to members in conjunction with Dr. Raven's speaker series appearance. This program will take place on Thursday, April 15th at 11 a.m. Registration is now available at the membership section of mobot.org or by calling the number on the back of your membership card. Details on book purchases and the discount are also available on our website. On May 4th, we will welcome garden horticulturist Erin Lynn Vogel to our virtual stage. Erin will explore the health, costs, and environmental benefits of vegetable gardening and offer tips and tricks for planning your garden, selecting plants, and creating a beautiful and productive space of your own. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's presenter, Cori. Anne is the owner of Kitchen Conservatory, a member of the St. Louis Herb Society, and a self-professed cooking nut. For over 35 years, Kitchen Conservatory has offered the finest kitchen tools and helped countless people learn to become better cooks with their 900 delectable cooking classes held each year. Anne has trained in restaurant kitchens in Italy, France, and across the United States. We are producing this program live today, and that's because Anne wants you to be an active participant in today's program. Please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions as we go, and I will do my best to ask those of Anne in real time. Today's program is presented in conjunction with the St. Louis Herb Society, whose annual herb sale is just around the corner. Before I turn the kitchen over to Anne, please welcome Mary Hammer to tell us a little bit more about this year's online-only herb sale. Mary?
Thank you, Allison. Yes, I'm a member of the St. Louis Herb Society. We are celebrating our 80th year in operation this year, so that's fun. Our herb sale is coming up very close at hand. In conjunction with the horticulture department of the Missouri Botanical Garden, we will be offering over 8,000 herbs and over 150 different varieties of herbs. Not only will we have some plants that you're very familiar with, but we'll probably have some varieties that you're not as familiar with as well. Our sale this year will be entirely online. So you'll be able to visit our website, which is stlouisherbsociety.org. And if you don't remember that, you can just Google St. Louis Herb Society. And on that website, not only will you be able to find a list of all the plants, along with growing information and photographs of all the plants that we've ordered, but you'll also be able to order the plants. Beginning on March 26th, through the 2nd of April, garden members will be able to place their orders and pay for them. You'll have to enter a code, and again, this will all be sent to you via email through the garden and will be available to you later on. The code is 4344, and you'll need to have your garden membership number handy also when you place your order. At the time of your order, you'll select a pickup time, a 15-minute window pickup time, because plants will be picked up on Friday, April the 30th, and Saturday morning, May the 1st. No plants will be for sale at that time, so all your plant orders have to be done. Again, March 26th through April 2nd, you'll be able to order your plants and receive your 10% discount at that time. From April 9th through 16th, the sale is open to the public, but no discounts will apply at that time. Orders will not be held past noon on Saturday, the 1st of May. So be sure that you'll put it on your calendar. You will be sent a reminder of your plant order and pickup time about a week before that it occurs. Again, the website has a list of all the plants we'll be selling, and hopefully you'll be able to try something new as well as some of your old favorites. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce my friend and St. Louis Herb Society colleague, Ann Cori. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Mary, for having me. And I want you to know I am forever grateful to Mary because our herb of the year is parsley, and this is cilantro. And how often are they confused? And Mary taught me the trick to always remember how to distinguish between parsley and cilantro, because parsley leaf is pointy. It's a P like parsley for pointy, and cilantro leaf is curly, and it's a C for curly like cilantro. Isn't that clever?
That's
Works
very-
every time.
works every
I
time.
tell all the checkout clerks at Schnucks this too, and Dierbergs.
That's great.
Yes. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So we're going to be making, parsley is the herb of the year, and we are going to be doing parsley today because I consider parsley to be the Forrest Gump of herbs. And the reason why, it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous, but it gets no recognition. So let's make parsley the center of the plate, and we can give this wonderful, very adaptive herb its due of why you want to have parsley in your garden and parsley on your plate on a regular basis. So here is flat leaf parsley, and the two basic kinds that you'll generally see are flat leaf parsley and curly parsley. And a lot of people make fun of curly parsley because they think it's only on the plate for decoration. Well, you do want to eat curly parsley, but I consider that flat leaf has a lot more flavor. Sometimes it's called Italian parsley. So, but parsley stems, unlike cilantro stems, parsley stems aren't so good to eat. So when you get a sprig of parsley like this, it's important that you look at how the leaves are, and you can take these, pinch these two off down here, and then pinch the one on the top. So you never want to take the whole sprig because that gives you too much stem, but to pinch it at the bottom and then pinch it at the top. So there you have it, parsley pinched at the bottom, pinched at the bottom, pinched at the top. I discard the stems, and we have a bowl of parsley leaves. Now, at this year's Herb Society, there's also something else. They have a couple of varieties of parsley that they're selling. They're selling the Italian parsley, they're selling the curly parsley, and then they're selling a variety called Hamburg. And this is probably most not known by most people. But here's the interesting thing about Hamburg parsley is that it's developed for the root. And so if you think of, say, celery root, you can buy celery stalks or you can buy celery root. And it's, although they're related, it's actually two different plants that create it, because one is developed for the leaves and the other is developed for the root. So I want to show you parsley root. And parsley is a biannual, which means it'll come back the next year. You'll plant, you get an extra little spring bonus when you plant parsley, which is kind of fun. So I went out into my garden this morning and I dug up my parsley plant. So this plant I planted last year. I enjoyed it, I harvested, I used it all last summer long. And then this morning, I went out and dug the whole thing up, and look, there's a root. And this root, or a taproot they call it, is actually very edible and very delicious. This is kind of a skinny little thing because this is not Hamburg parsley. This is developed for the leaves, not the root. But here is a parsley root, fully developed, full grown. And this is what parsley root looks like. Now you may say, looks like a parsnip to me. Well, here's a parsnip and here's a parsley root. And you're going to say, now, how can I tell the difference? Really? Are you just tricking me that aren't they actually the same vegetable? No, they're not the same vegetable. I consider parsnips to have a very creamy texture. And parsley root tastes like parsley. And for those of you who haven't tasted parsley, time to start diving in and tasting, because what you get from the taste of parsley is green, it's herbaceous, it's crispy, it adds a great deal of flavor. So one of the recipes I wanted to show this morning, and I had to make it ahead of time, is a parsley root gratin. And I baked this in the oven for 2 hours with the cover on it, and I'm going to pull it off now. And what I did is I used actually both parsley root and parsnips and carrots. And I have a layer of onions on the bottom, and I lifted it up, and on top are lima beans. And this will be a dish that'll change your view of not only lima beans, but also parsley. I think the only thing this my gratin needs is to be garnished with fresh green parsley, because everything always looks better with a lot of green parsley on top. So I spent some time taking the parsley leaves and taking them off the stem. And now I'm just going to take the knife and chop, chop, chop. One of the beauties about parsley is that you can chop and chop and chop. There are other herbs that are much more delicate, and basil is a good example. If I chopped basil like this, it would look ugly. But parsley, and this is one of the advantages of parsley, parsley is beautiful no matter how much you chop it. You can chop it in the food processor and make a pesto out of it. You can randomly chop it with your knife. You don't have to be precise about chopping parsley, but take a little bit, garnish it, and it looks beautiful. So I have a couple of dishes to show you with the idea that we want to make parsley the center of the plate, and that parsley can be ideal added to your dish, not just as a curly garnish on the side. And a number of years ago, there was a big chef in England who gained a great deal of notoriety for, of all things, parsley salad. And his name is Fergus Henderson. And what he did is that he served parsley salad with roasted bone marrow. And the idea is that this fresh, green, herbaceous flavor complements a very rich dish. And so what we're going to do is I'll just take a little bit of parsley and mix it with some chopped shallots. And the other ingredients are capers and lemon. And the idea behind this this fresh taste, I'm just going to pull some capers out of the brine, is that parsley has the advantage of cutting richness because it is so herbaceous and so fresh. And a lot of times in cooking, where you see parsley most used is on rich meat dishes like steak. The classic steak butter, known as maître d'hôtel butter, is a combination of parsley and anchovies, which cut through the richness of the steak. Or you see a parsley salad, and what I'm going to do is brighten that up with a little bit of lemon juice to give it a real oomph of flavor. And then, and of course, we always want some salt and pepper on it. And this is something that's quite simple that can be served with any kind of rich meat and just has a real fresh punch to it. The other way to do this is in a Cuisinart or a food processor or a blender, is to puree this with some, and add some, instead of the lemon juice, do some red wine vinegar and some olive oil to make it into a smooth paste. And that can also be a very delicious parsley sauce on top of steak. Then the other way that parsley is used, and very importantly used, is in seafood. And if you want a rule of thumb, I would say that the the fewer the number of ingredients in your dish, the more important parsley is. And so let's take an example of the French do a great dish called sole meunière. And all it is a piece of white fish, butter, parsley. The parsley is critical. Or spaghetti with clam sauce, 5 ingredients: garlic, parsley, clams, hot red pepper flakes, and olive oil. So that is where the parsley shines. And if you don't have that balance to the rich food or the very seafood food, your dish will fall flat. So one of the most important ingredients or friends of parsley, let's say, is garlic. And so I have a couple of cloves of garlic here, and I'm going to put salt in. And this is a trick that's really, garlic can stick to your knife and be very, and make it hard to rock and cut like that. But if you put a sprinkle of salt in with your garlic, what happens is that it's much easier to mince up. So garlic is just a fabulous combination with parsley, because parsley is green and garlic is sharp, and they balance the two up. And in fact, I would say it's, well, there's an old theory in Italian food that if you have garlic, you have to have parsley. If you have onion, you do basil. So just think of whatever garlic dish you have, automatically reach for the bowl of parsley. Look at all these beautiful leaves I have, and start chopping away. And you will have a dish that blends well, balances each other out, because parsley is a balancer. It keeps it rounds out the flavor of it. And the only problem with parsley from a gardener's point of view is that you have to pick it and use it. You can't just let it go, because if you let it go, it will bolt and it will flower and it will seed, and then you won't have an herb that is so good culinarily. So one of the things to think about is a dish that requires 2 cups of parsley. And there's a great dish where you want to have as much parsley as you can think of. And so I would say, you frequently you buy parsley by the bunch from the supermarket, but you don't use the whole bunch. Well, let's start cooking dishes where you need a whole lot of parsley. And one of the best is a dish called tabbouleh, which is a Middle Eastern dish, and it's basically a parsley salad. What I'm going to do is to give you a starting version of it, and so that you can take this dish and then add to it so many different flavors and turn it into such a wonderful combination of a fresh summer salad, using and cutting back your parsley in your garden. Because remember, the nicest thing that you as an herb gardener can do is to use your herbs, to harvest them, to cut them straight off and use them. They will come back, and they like to be used. They don't just want to be ornamental, they want to be useful plants. And of course, that's how the Herb Society defines herbs: a plant with a use. So this is bulgur wheat. And what I did to the bulgur wheat was I brought a pot of water to a boil, and I poured it over the dried wheat, and so it fluffed up. So this is now ready to go. I'm going to add my parsley, and this is parsley with garlic and salt in it. And I can do any amount of parsley in it. It can be more parsley and less bulgur. It can be less bulgur and more parsley. You don't have to worry about specific ratios in it. It's ever expanding. As I said, this can be a starting point of any other vegetable or fruit that you might have available to put in it. For example, tomatoes and cucumbers. I like to put fruit in it, like cherries or pomegranate seeds. What I have today are some raspberries, just because I just want you to know that any fruit will work, that you can make it look. I just like the red color with the green because I think it looks so attractive that way. And then, of course, we want to season it. And you can season it with lemon juice, lime juice, vinegar, and oil. And I will squeeze in a little bit of lime. By the way, this is a great press because you put the fruit cut side down, and then when you squeeze it, it turns it inside out, and you get every last bit of the lime, because frequently lime can be very hard to juice because it doesn't seem like they have ever enough lime. So we'll put in a little bit of lime juice in it. I will put in a little bit of olive oil to it. And there you have a different version of a parsley salad to enjoy. And we'll have a little bit of fresh cracked pepper on top. And some more salt, just in case. And there we have tabbouleh. And I could probably put double as much parsley in here if I'd like. So there we go. We keep coming up with more and more things with parsley. I also want to show you another thing. If you're a novice herb gardener, you may be a little not quite sure about plants that come back and plants that don't. And I brought this in from my home garden because my chives are just up and the chives are ready to use. And so one of the advantages of having a garden that when you get these spring plantings, because after all, I have my little bit of parsley from my garden and I have my chives, and guess what? They're a great combination. They like to go together. And so when something like this comes up, at home, I use container gardening because I want my herbs as close as possible to the kitchen, and my regular garden is too far away from the kitchen, so then I don't pick up the herbs. But if I just take some scissors and snip out right off the top of the chives, snip those off, and then in harvesting the parsley, when you pretend this was in the garden, you want to harvest right from the top. A lot of people think they want to take the little leaves off the side or pull it down from the side. That isn't what the herb likes. The herb likes actually to be harvested straight from the top, because then this will grow back and produce more leaves. If you cut it from the side, it won't, and this is true with any herb, right off the top, give it a buzz cut, and then you get the kind of herbs you want. As I said, mentioned earlier, I don't care so much for the parsley stems. So cilantro stems are tender and delicate and delicious, but parsley stems, you will get a better result if you actually go through and take off the stems and leave yourself with just the leaves for it. So I'm just going to pick off the stems here, and then we have parsley and chives, which are a tremendous combination in so many dishes, and maybe coming up in your garden right now. At least they are for me. And so this is an example where the parsley, I can just run the knife over and chop it up. Chop, 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 chop. Like that. And it can be as fine or as coarse as you want. Some people like parsley to have big leaves so that they can see it. Other people like parsley to be very, very finely minced. Either works. That's one of the versatile beauties of this herb, which is so adapted in so many ways. So I have my parsley very, very finely minced here. I'm going to take my chives, but I don't want to treat the chives in quite the same way, because I think chives are pretty when they're just cut crosswise. So all I want to do is run the knife back and forth just to get the chives perfectly cut. I won't then be going the knife over the chives again because this will do it. And I have those little circles. Chives are an allium, which means they're a member of the onion family. And so they'll give a very mild onion flavor to the dish. And I will get a little bit of bowl to put this in, parsley and chives. And so I'm going to make a dressing that's called salsa verde, which just is green sauce. And when you see a salsa verde, that's the beauty of it, is that you just want it all green. And it's a great way to start with parsley and chives. And then I'm going to put in a few shallots in there. And some lemon juice to brighten it up. It's another dish that can go on any kind of meat or fish or vegetable and give some great flavor to it. And a little bit more lemon juice here to have it a nice bright flavor to it. Some salt. And then I mentioned earlier that a great combination with parsley is anchovies. And I know people have a little bit of a fear or trepidation on anchovies, but trust me, you never discount how well this flavor goes with parsley, because once again, you have something sharp and strong balanced with something herbaceous. And the parsley rounds out the flavor with anchovies. And it's anchovies are kind of like garlic. If you have an anchovy in a dish, add parsley. You'll like the anchovy. So we'll put that in. I'm going to put in a few capers because I think that also, capers add a briny saltiness to a dish. And then I'm going to add peppadew peppers. If you're not familiar with this little red pepper, you can use a red bell pepper or any other kind of pepper, but these have a little bit of heat to them. They are in brine, so they're pickled. And I like them also for the color, because after all, we've got green and red going on there, and it makes very attractive color on that. So a couple of the peppadew peppers, which I'm just going to mince up and put in our salsa verde. And just like the tabbouleh, salsa verde is something that lends itself to variation. It lends itself to you opening up the fridge and say, well, what vegetable do I want to use and get rid of? Or what do I need to have? What looks good in the market today that I want to add to my dinner tonight? Because the whole point of herbs is to make our food flavorful and to have food that we'll enjoy and that we want to eat. So this salsa verde, and I'm looking at it with the parsley, and you know what? It's not green enough. Luckily, I got a bowl of green here. We can make it greener. Add more parsley when in doubt. Now there gives the question, can you ever have too much parsley in a dish? Haven't found that yet. But we will add a little bit more parsley in here to our salsa verde so that we have something that is, well, actually green, since the name of the dish is green. And get that in there. Put that up there. And then this is, so what I have in here is the lemon juice and the capers, the shallots, the chives, parsley. I'm just going to round it out with a little bit of olive oil so that it has a nice balance that the oil and richness that the oil gives it as a salsa. And what will this be good on? Obviously, I could just put it on a piece of grilled fish. I could put it on a piece of cooked chicken, but just for, since we're in spring and spring vegetables are so good, this is a plate of roasted asparagus. And I'm just going to lay our salsa verde over the roasted asparagus to add a nice flavor on that, because parsley is very adaptable to the foods that you want to use. So there is another little dish of parsley, another condiment, another thing that you didn't know that could be great for using parsley. But let's talk about another one, because parsley is endless. And there's so many great things that you can do with parsley. And one of them is, and I'm sure all of you at some point in your life have made pesto. And you probably think that pesto needs to be basil. Pesto is just a paste. And you can make pesto with any kind of herb that you want. And obviously some herbs are more delicious in pesto, and other herbs maybe not so exciting, but you can also use pesto as a blend and do multiple herbs in it. But parsley makes a delicious pesto all on its own. Pesto is an Italian paste that traditionally, what we think of with the basil pesto is made with garlic, pine nuts, Parmesan cheese, and it all comes together with some olive oil to bring it into a smooth paste. Now, I love basil. Basil's my friend, but basil's got a problem. Basil darkens and discolors when you cut it. And so when you make a pesto, you'll start off and it'll be this beautiful green color. And then as it sits, it oxidizes. And then it's not so attractive. So one of the tricks is to put another herb in with the basil so that it can keep its green color. Parsley will do that trick, because no matter how you chop parsley, it's always green. And I called this lecture, "It's Easy Being Green," because that was a play off Kermit the Frog's song, who said, "It's not easy being green." Well, Kermit obviously didn't have enough parsley in his life, because it is easy to be green and it stays green. That's the beauty. So what I have over here, we'll just bring this up here, is a food processor. You can traditionally, pesto was made in a mortar and pestle, but that requires a little bit of oomph to do. Luckily, electricity solves this problem for us. And traditionally, pesto is made with pine nuts, toasted pine nuts, because I'm going to use, what I really like in parsley is pistachios. So I'm going to put in some pistachios and garlic in this, and then a whole heap of parsley into our food processor. And then I blend it up. You can hear the nuts. Add the olive oil while it's still going. So there we have our pesto, and I'm just going to scrape it down, because sometimes up the sides it gets it doesn't get completely blended in. And then off we go again. And this is a parsley pistachio pesto. Which will forever stay green. That's part of the beauty of it. Now, what could you put this on? You could certainly put it on pasta. You could certainly put it on fish, on chicken, on steak. It's just another condiment. One of the beauties of pesto is that it freezes very well and then can be added to things Or you can, the other thing to do with pestos is you can also use them into softened butter to make a compound butter, because it's a nice paste that's ready to go and easy to do. Allison, do we have any questions from our viewers?
We sure do. So you had just mentioned that the pesto will freeze well. What about that salsa verde that you made a few minutes ago? Does that freeze for future use, or is that best used right away?
I consider that salsa, all salsas are really best used right away. I know that you can, when people make a great salsa, they want to keep it for some time and hope that it will hold. This will hold for a couple of days in the refrigerator, but what happens is with your fresh veggies, the shallots, they sort of start to wilt and are not so good. And the problem with freezing something like this is that it's okay to freeze, it's not okay to defrost, because when you take it out of the freezer, it's very wet. And then what I like about a salsa is that it's perky, and nothing out of the freezer is ever perky. So I don't recommend freezing this, but just making it in batch sizes that you're going to use.
Right, we've got another question about the parsley stems. You mentioned that you'll pluck the leaves off, but can you use the stems for broth or anything like that?
Frequently, you will see many recipes that will call for a couple of parsley stems in making bone broth or chicken stock or something like that. And it's fine to put the stems in there. I wouldn't go crazy and put all the stems in. Just a couple is enough. And, try the experiment for yourself and taste a stem, because it's much more strongly tasting, and chances are not something, you don't want the stem to overpower your broth. You just want it to be a background flavor, not a foreground flavor. So I'm afraid most of my stems go into the trash or the compost.
Then how about how far in advance can you trim and wash your parsley for use?
That is a great question, because one of the things that people have the most trouble with is storing herbs. Now, it's one thing when you go out into your garden 5 minutes before dinner and you harvest them fresh and they're ready to go. But when you buy the parsley at the grocery store, and at the grocery store, they are spritzing it all the time with water to make it look fresh. You then take that wet bunch of parsley and you put it in a plastic bag to buy it. And then you come home and you take that plastic bag with your wet parsley in it and you put it in the fridge. And 2 days later, your parsley looks terrible. It's all mushy. So there are a couple of ways to store parsley. I can keep it in a vase like a bunch of flowers with clean water, and it will stay perky. Or I can take it out of that wet bag and completely and totally dry it and put it into a sealed Ziploc bag. And if I do that with these leaves, the parsley will stay looking fresh for some time, because it's when it sits in water in a plastic bag in your refrigerator is when it goes bad and starts to mush out on you. And the point of parsley is not mush. We want it to be perky.
And we also have a question about chimichurri. You used parsley for that pesto, but can you use it in chimichurri, or what is that made with?
So chimichurri I call it Argentine pesto. It's just another version of pesto. And I almost did a chimichurri today for you, because it's just like making a pesto like this. Only with chimichurri, we change up the flavors. Instead of an Italian flavor with pistachios, with chimichurri, I like to put a jalapeno pepper in it and give it a little oomph, so it has a little zip to it. Frequently with chimichurri, the parsley is blended with other herbs. And that is one of the virtues of parsley, is how it is a blending herb. So for example, I could do equal parts parsley and mint, or equal parts parsley and cilantro. Or I could do parsley, mint, and cilantro to make a chimichurri. That has the advantages also. But in making a chimichurri, you do it just like a pesto. In other words, you pile up your food processor with a whole bunch of fresh herbs. And can you make it with just parsley? You absolutely can make a chimichurri with just parsley. But you're not. But what you put into it then is some seasoning that will then make it a little bit more Latin and a less Italian, like having a fresh jalapeno pepper or something along those lines. You could also, in your chimichurri, put in some cumin seed to give it a little bit more Latin flavor to it. And chimichurri is a wonderful condiment on top of grilled meats. But it's just a great little thing for that. So that is always something that can be done with it, because pesto is not just for the Italians. You can see it in all kinds of other formats when you puree the herbs and use them as a condiment.
Great, thanks so much. And also now we have some questions about growing parsley. Is it a biannual, or can you tell us a little bit more about the growth cycle?
Yes, parsley, many herbs are annual. So for example, basil is an annual herb. And when the temperature gets to 32 degrees, the basil dies. No matter what you've done to it, the basil will die at 32 degrees. Parsley is, and then there are herbs that are perennial. So thyme, for example, will come back year after year, and always, once you plant thyme, you may never need to plant it again. Oregano, chives, I think some people consider chives to be a little bit too much because they do so well and grow so effectively. But parsley is biannual, which means it really only has 2 years. And the second year is not as good as the first year. So as I mentioned, I planted this parsley last year. I enjoyed it last year, and this came up for me this year. But if I let this stay in my garden this year, it's not going to be the parsley that I had the first year. I can use it in the spring, and it's delicious right now, but it's not going to produce over the summer the way a new planting of parsley will. So I consider this little kind of a bonus parsley year that I have the second year, but I'm going to plant fresh new parsley again this year so that I have a good parsley crop this year.
And with your parsley, you mentioned you do container gardening, but do you have issues with the rabbits eating your parsley or other pests getting in your herbs?
So I do. I have in the ground gardening, and I have container gardening. I do both. And so the container gardening is a little easier to keep it up and away from the rabbits. But I will say that unlike some of the more aggressively tasting herbs, rabbits love parsley. And I don't think it's just rabbits. I've been battling a groundhog for some time at my house, and the groundhog has been known to mow down my parsley too. So one way to do it is to protect your parsley by planting the more pungent herbs around it, so that in the hopes that they don't find it. But I remember one time last summer, I came out and my parsley had been leveled, and I was like, time to move the parsley into a more safer spot, a little bit closer to the kitchen, and because it is, the rabbits do enjoy parsley, yes. And that's just proof of its versatility, because it's not such a strong tasting herb. It can go everywhere.
And when's the best time to plant parsley seeds? Is that now, or when should we do that?
So you're asking about planting seeds. One of the beauties of the St. Louis Herb Society sale is that we give you plants, not seeds. Growing from seed is always a little bit more challenging to do. Yes, you can grow from seeds, but My suggestion is to take advantage of buying the plants already germinated, and you will get much better success in your growing.
And then during the winter, do you store your containers of thyme and chives and parsley, all that indoors, or where does that go?
No, my container gardening stays outdoors. So if we go back to our chives, this lived outdoors all winter long. And look at this beautiful growth I have in early March. Just let nature, I didn't do anything to this other than pull a few weeds out of it this morning, but this is ready to go, and was happy outside all winter long. Now I can do that with, but so chives are hardy that way. But I will admit that some of my herbs I don't think are coming back. We had a really hard winter this year, and those 2 weeks of below freezing, I think, killed some of my container herbs. And so my container parsley died, I think because it was more exposed, but it's interesting that the parsley actually in the ground didn't die. So, the thing about herbs is that every year it's kind of a little experiment. You see what thrives, you see what the weather's going to do. Some years you're going to have better crops of some herbs than you will in other years. I expect that my thyme will come back from being wintered over, but my rosemary never does. I have given up on trying to winter over rosemary. I've decided that it's all our climate's fault. It's not my fault that I can't keep rosemary over the winter. So I always buy a new rosemary plant.
And it looks like your chives are in a clay pot. Is that the best type of container for your container gardening, or what works best?
I think any kind of pot you like, decorative pots or clay pots are great. But although it looks like a clay pot, it's actually a plastic pot. Otherwise I would be lugging. It's too heavy to lug. So I find that I'm enjoying the plastic pots a little just for the ease of maneuverability. The clay pots are too heavy for me.
And it looks like we have a few viewers who are having issues with caterpillars eating their parsley, or the black swallowtail butterflies laying eggs. Is it okay to eat the parsley after those are gone, or what should you do about that?
Well, I'm afraid I'm a cook, not a gardener, and I don't have advice on how to remove the pests from the parsley. But certainly when you harvest your parsley, you can wash it and use it. And, bugs, there are some people who consider bugs to be a good source of B12.
Then we also have a lot of questions about these recipes. People want to know if they can make these at home and if you'll share. So we'll have to make sure to send these out to our members after the program.
Absolutely. I have written up the recipes. I have it available on a digital file, which I'm going to provide to the garden, and then they can send them around. I also want to encourage that if you have any questions, if you go to make recipes, or, I consider Kitchen Conservatory to be a food resource, a helpline. Every day we get calls on, how do I make this? Or what do I do with this? And we want to help you, and so that you can have success in the food that you're making. Because I think that food can be such fun and flavor on it. And, so the recipes that I've made here, I actually haven't gotten to one of them, which is the parsley sauce, which is really another form of pesto. And I might as well show that to you too, as long as I've got it, so that you can get you confused with yet another parsley thing. Here's a little bit of red onion, because one of the things that's great to show is that you can use, when you make your pesto blends and sauce blends, you can use any kind of allium. You don't have to just use chives or just use garlic. I've got this one with a red onion. I'll put in some nice parsley. And this is the one that I want to do with a little zip of red wine vinegar in it. And you know what? Anchovy would be great in that, because it's going to go on steak. Line that up. Douse it with oil. And there we have yet another version of a parsley sauce to do. Go ahead, Allison, more questions?
I've got a few more.
Oh, goody.
So you mentioned if you buy your parsley at the store, they had just sprayed it with water. So what's the best way to dry your parsley?
So when you come home with your herbs that you've just purchased from the store, I know I've been guilty of it myself. I just throw the bag in the fridge. Not a good idea if you're interested in your herbs lasting more than 24 hours. So I like to wash the parsley, and then to dry it, actually the best way is a salad spinner. Put it in a salad spinner and spin it dry. Or you can use a kitchen towel or a whole mess of paper towels. You can certainly let it drain in a colander first before you use all the towels on it. But I do love my salad spinner for effectively, quickly, easily drying herbs.
Then we have a couple questions about just the varieties of parsley. The Hamburg parsley you mentioned earlier, do the roots need a year to get established with those?
Yeah, well, so the thing is about parsley root. I challenge you all to make a parsley root that's this big. If somebody in this audience is able to do that, I am so impressed. I'm going to confess that I bought this parsley root at a local store because this is the parsley root that I was able to grow. But then this is not the Hamburg variety. The Hamburg variety will be bigger, but you will get a bigger root in the spring if you let it go over the winter. And in fact, I talked about how similar they are to parsnips. There's a whole theory that the best parsnips from the plant are the spring dug ones. In other words, you let it winter over and then you dig up your parsnips, and it's actually a spring vegetable, not a fall vegetable, because that's where it's going to be bigger. And there's a theory that wintering over with the cold winter makes it sweeter. But you can even use the root of this. It may not seem like very much, but chop this. So if I just take this, and you do want to peel it because it is a little bit fuzzy here with the skin, but you do want to peel it, and then you can add this to all kinds of different dishes. Oop. And there's my little baby parsley root, but it does pack some flavor and it is worth using. So your volunteer parsley in the spring from last year does have a use today.
And where did you buy that parsley root? It looks like we've got some viewers who have had some trouble finding it in stores.
I would agree with that. It's very hard to find. And I'm always impressed whenever I do find it. I got this at Global Food Market on South Kirkwood Road. They have parsley root, really tremendous looking parsley root right now. But I have also purchased it at some of our other local grocery stores like Schnucks and Dierbergs have had it. It's not regular. It's the sort of thing that when they do have it, buy it, because that will encourage them to have it again, because sometimes people they get in exotic produce and nobody ever buys it because they don't know what it is. When I came in today, I asked people what they thought this was, and a lot of people said horseradish. So you have to be careful that you don't accidentally buy horseradish instead of parsley root and try to use it, because you might be a little surprised.
And you told us that great trick at the beginning of the presentation about parsley has points, but what about curly parsley? How do you tell the difference between that and cilantro?
So curly parsley it is very curly all through the leaf. And if you look at cilantro, so the cilantro leaf has a curve to it, but it's not ruffled. The cilantro leaf doesn't have a ruffle to it the way curly parsley. It's, I mean, you can see why it's developed as a garnish on a plate, because it's always perky and kind of stands up, and it never gets that limpid look to it. I think this may be the variety they call crispum, because, and I think it's an apt name because it always seems quite crisp. I think when you look at cilantro, it never looks crisp.
And we have just one more question about if you're purchasing a parsley plant, would you recommend the flat leaf over the Hamburg if you can just get one?
So the question is, what parsley should you buy? And absolutely, what you want to buy is Italian flat leaf parsley. It's the most versatile. It's the one that chefs love. It's the one that it really packs a flavor punch, and you'll find it substitutable in nearly all recipes. I think it has much more flavor than the curly parsley. It's something that is adaptable and enjoyable. The Hamburg variety, that would be my next parsley to buy, just so I can have the fun of a spring dug parsley root gratin and treat people to a dish they've never eaten before. But Italian parsley is the main culinary parsley that is adaptable in recipes across the world.
And have you ever used Japanese parsley? We've got a viewer who's interested in knowing how you might use it in the kitchen.
So I feel that you've stumped the chef on the last one. I don't know anything about Japanese parsley. I'd be eager to learn about Japanese parsley. Sometimes cilantro is called Chinese parsley, but I am not familiar with Japanese parsley. But that I think the Herb Society may have to investigate that for next year's sale.
Right. And then now we've got a couple questions about cilantro. Is it the same as parsley, treating it when you get home from the store? How do you keep that fresh?
So I think I think cilantro and parsley are both sold in supermarkets the same way. They're bunched up, they're left open, and they're spritzed with water on a regular basis. So when you pick up your bunch, it's wet. And so as you can see, I mean, I've had this cilantro out now this morning, and it's already started to wilt up a little bit. What you want with cilantro is you can keep it in water like a vase, or you can get a dry Ziploc bag, and that only works if your herbs are absolutely dry. If you think about when you buy the herb packets at the supermarket, they're in a little clamshell box that is dry, and it has a little piece of cloth in there to make sure that it stays dry, and that helps to keep it from wilting, and that is then stays cold to do that. But I don't think you should try to keep your herbs in your refrigerator for months on end. It's better to buy them, use them, cook them, eat them, enjoy them as fast as possible.
And how about chervil? Is that similar to parsley, or what's that herb?
Chervil is a great herb, and it is a very delicate herb. It's often confused for parsley, but it's much more delicate. And chervil is an herb that I have not been successful at growing in St. Louis because it is so delicate, and I think it doesn't like the high heat that we get here, and it will wimp out pretty quickly. Chervil is the leaf is quite tiny and delicate and has a little bit of curliness to it. It has a stronger licorice-like flavor than parsley does, and the French love chervil in light dishes like fish or chicken. But it is an herb that is so perishable that I don't use it very often.
And it looks like that was the last of our questions, but we do have several people talking about how you're such a great teacher and have been to the Kitchen Conservatory many, many times.
Please come back.
Yes. So I just want to thank you again for participating in our presentation, and thanks to all of our members for being here with us today. And make sure to check out the herb sale.
Yes, and recipes available. Thank you very much for having me.